The Allen Line Company appreciates all of the dedicated carriers it takes to move loads across the U.S. Stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Come on in. Scott here, manning the fort for host Mark Reddick while he's away, but that doesn't mean we won't hear from Mark today. In fact, we'll hear from him a couple of times over the next hour, first in his conversation with AAA's Director of Automotive Research, Greg Brannon, who helps us make sense of a new survey that indicates just how anxious the general public is about self-driving vehicles. And spoiler alert, they're pretty concerned. Then Mark will be back with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service for an important reminder and some important tips about the new beneficial ownership information reporting requirements. There are some legal challenges that might eventually change what's required, but for now, you'll need to be ready to file. And finally, we'll close things out with Keith Goebel, State Legislative Editor at Landline Magazine. Keith stops by with some good news and some bad news out of Florida and Wisconsin, respectively. One state is getting serious about predatory towing, while the other punted a bill that would have countered nuclear verdicts. All of that and more coming up. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's Under 21 pilot program isn't off to a great start. As of February, FMCSA's Safe Driver Apprenticeship Pilot Program had only received 113 applications from motor carriers. Only 34 of those carriers had been fully approved to participate in the program. The agency rejected 38 applications for not meeting safety qualifications. Another 36 applications met the safety standards but failed to complete registration. When the program launched in 2022, the goal was to accommodate 1,000 motor carriers and 3,000 under 21 drivers. The program was launched on the premise that there is a truck driver shortage, a claim the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association has always refuted. The pilot program is set to end in July of 2025. Diesel prices are up 6 cents. The U.S. Energy Information Administration now has diesel at $4.06 a gallon. All but one of the 10 regions EIA tracks saw an increase. The most was in the West Coast minus California at $4.25 a gallon, an 11-cent increase from last week. New England was the only region that stayed the same at $4.30 a gallon. ProMiles reports not much changed for prices. Diesel went unchanged from a week ago at $3.99 a gallon. A deportation hearing is scheduled for next month in Canada for the truck driver that caused the deadly Humboldt Broncos bus crash back in 2018. Jaskirat Singh Sidhu was sentenced to 8 years in prison for killing 16 people and injuring 13 others. The crash happened when he failed to stop at a stop sign at a rural intersection in Saskatchewan and hit a bus carrying the junior hockey team. Sidhu is a permanent resident from India and was granted full parole last year. CTV News reports that back in December, the federal court dismissed applications from Sidhu's lawyer, who argued that Canada Border Services officials didn't take into consideration his previous clean record and remorse. According to his lawyer, after the hearing, he can file an application on humanitarian grounds to try to stay in Canada. The hearing is scheduled for May 24th. The funding allotted for transportation projects in the state of Maine is at risk of being slashed. WMTW reports that during a weekend vote, legislators opted to shift nearly $60 million from the Highway Fund into the state's general fund. Bruce Van Note is the Maine Transportation Commissioner. He says the shift will impact nearly everything they do. The 3-year work plan was released in January by the Maine DOT that was expected to cost more than $4 billion. According to the article, a spokesperson for the governor's office says the governor is concerned about the budget the committee passed and is urging them to reconsider their changes. Things on the market are starting to look up. Brent Hutto with Truck Stop says freight rates went up a couple of weeks ago and then came down to around $2.38 with fuel. He says that's still difficult for profitability, but he had some advice for owner-operators.
Really negotiate the cost of fuel. When you're talking to a broker, you're talking to a shipper, talk about the cost of fuel and negotiate your prices higher. So that's one of your big advantages because everybody understands that. The pressure in the marketplace has actually been really good for owner operators. normally pressure, the market demand index, which is a truck stop index, is normally around 50. That's been the balance after the pandemic. Well, it's been the 70s for 6 straight weeks. That's a big deal. It's a really, really big deal because that means the marketplace is beginning, very slowly now, very beginning to kind of come back to a little bit more positive market for the small carriers in the marketplace and the owner operators. So the overall, and the van rates decreased week over week. The last week of this week went down 4 cents. They go up and down all the time. Flatbed decreased a penny. Reefer went down 8 cents. So different market. But here's the thing: don't look at the averages. If you're an owner operator, don't look at the averages. Go and understand the marketplace in which you work in or want to work in, and figure out the best rates there. Because there's lots of much better rates than I'm talking about here. These are just averages. There's tons of great rates. So know how to do searching on the load boards that you use. And we hope that you find the great success on that.
Tune into tomorrow's show for the full market update. A new way of booting trucks has started in New York. New York's chief of transportation posted recently that the NYPD had deployed the Barnacle device, which is used to immobilize vehicles violating parking regulations. This device attaches to a truck's windshield and prevents the driver from operating the vehicle. According to the Post, the device will be used to hold those drivers accountable, reduce parking congestion, and address vehicles that are a nuisance and hazard to the community. More than $54 million has been announced for transportation upgrades in Rhode Island. According to ABC 6, the Rhode Island delegation announced the funding for projects like stormwater drainage to reduce roadway flooding, resurfacing projects along I-136, and a dehumidification system on the cables and anchors of the Mount Hope Bridge. Multiple semi-trailers were destroyed over the weekend in a fire at a warehouse in south-central Las Vegas. According to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, at around 8 p.m. on Sunday, fire crews responded to a report of a semi-trailer on fire, with the possibility of the fire spreading to a building. The fire caused multiple trailers to go up in flames. The cause of the fire is under investigation. No injuries were reported. And finally, the eclipse wasn't the only thing people were looking up at in Kansas City yesterday. Local news stations report that first responders were called to an overpass after witnesses spotted a goat that got stuck on a ledge. They were able to rescue the goat, and it's now being helped by the Casey Pet Project, which is cautiously optimistic it will make a full recovery. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. Our annual Truckers for Troops campaign is officially over for 2023, but you don't have to wait until next year to make a difference. You can make a donation all year round through the OOIDA website. The Truckers for Troops program sends care packages to U.S. troops overseas and supports efforts here at home through the Veterans Community Project. Just go to the main menu at the upper left corner of OOIDA.com. Then under Membership, click on Truckers for Troops 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Marty Ellis and the Spirit of the American Trucker have set up shop in the Lone Star State to start the week. Marty and the OOIDA Tour Truck are at the TA in Hillsboro through Wednesday. That's off Interstate 35 at exit 370. So stop by, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA at a discount. Coming up next, if you ask, most truckers will tell you just what they think about fully automated vehicles, and the reactions you get are going to be pretty predictable. But what does the general public think? They have pretty strong opinions on the topic too, as a matter of fact. A new survey from AAA says more and more people are anxious about fully self-driving vehicles. When you get into driver assist technologies, however, the answer gets a little more nuanced, but the survey does a good job of breaking down how people feel. And after the break, we'll get a full breakdown courtesy of AAA's Greg Brannon. Then later on, we'll catch up with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service for some helpful tips for the new beneficial ownership information reporting requirements. And we'll close things out with a couple short trips to Florida and Wisconsin, where we've got new details about legislation that has truck drivers in mind. All of that coming up right after this break, so stick around. Landline Now returns in just a moment.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Ask most truckers what they think about the idea of fully automated vehicles, and the answer is predictable. But what does the general public think? You're listening to Landline Now, and I'm your host, Mark Reddick. Welcome back to the program. In fact, the general public holds a very strong opinion on the topic of fully driverless vehicles as well. But when you get into driver assist technologies, those that aid the driver but stop short of full automation, the answer gets a little more nuanced. The American Automobile Association, or AAA, tracks that information with an annual survey looking into the details of public perception on the topic. Greg Brannon, Director of Automotive Engineering Research at AAA, spoke with me recently about the topic, delving into the details of the group's latest survey. We're talking here about AAA's annual automated vehicle survey, and I want to start kind of broadly. Why does AAA track this particular information?
So AAA is an advocate for motorists in the U.S. We go back to our earliest roots in 1902. We were advocating for equal rights of horse and buggy alongside these newfangled automobiles. And then some 122 years later, here we are. Still doing the same. And so we want to make sure that as new technologies are deployed, they're done so safely, they're done so bringing the driver along with them. And so for a long time now, we've been tracking consumers' attitudes towards autonomous vehicles and looking at the trends and trying to understand what's driving those trends.
Give us kind of a broad scope of the results of this year's survey, if you would. Kind of broadly, what were the results?
So we've been asking people for some time whether or not they would trust a fully automated vehicle to drive them with them riding in it. We've taken a few different approaches to that, but we've done it in the same way for many years now to be able to track it year over year. And a particular question around that survey related to that trust. And when we ask if people would trust that automated vehicle to drive itself, we end up with 2/3 of Americans saying that they'd be afraid to ride in an automated vehicle, and another 25% that are saying that they're unsure about that, and leaving only 9% that say that they would actually trust the automated vehicle to drive it while they're riding in it.
Does this represent kind of a significant shift from your past results?
It does, but not from last year. Last year, we saw very similar results, but coming up to that, in 21 and 22, we saw a little bit more trust. 15% of Americans saying that they would have trusted an automated vehicle back then. But I think there's been some events maybe that have happened in the last couple of years that have changed the idea of that trust and reduced that among Americans.
I don't know if you got into this or not, but I'm curious if you talked with members of the public or gave them a chance to comment on why it is they do or do not trust these automated vehicles.
Well, it's difficult to get to the core of it. Some of it is really seated in a concern of giving up control. Many people have a fear of flying and things like that because of this, giving up control of what's happening in the situation. But I think with automated vehicles, there's more going on than just that. We have a lot of well-publicized crashes and fatalities when people are over-relying on these systems, and that is very likely playing into some of the fears that people have. Meanwhile, consumers are telling us that they are very much interested in technologies that they can get in their car today that are driver assistance systems as opposed to fully automated systems. And they're very much interested and willing to pay for these driver assistance systems that will help them drive as opposed to a system that drives for them.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about your expectations of the survey because obviously you've seen past results and you're aware of kind of where people's opinions are going. To what extent was the change in opinion expected?
Well, we did not really foresee back in 2023, we did not anticipate the decline, or sort of the rapid decline that we saw in that level of trust, and we thought that may have been just a blip, and in the news cycle, or some perceptions. But when we got the results back this year and we saw that it had stayed almost exactly the same as the previous year, it gives us an idea that there's a trend here. And I think what people are telling us is that we need to do a better job with the technologies that are out there today in order to get them comfortable with the idea of giving up more control to something that is, well, maybe not working perfectly already today. And so our expectation is that over time that trust will increase, but I think it's going to be a long road to get there.
You mentioned earlier driver assist systems, which is obviously kind of a form of automation, but we've seen these instances where people engage what they think is a fully self-driving system that is not a fully self-driving system, which led to some of those incidents you were referring to. Did the public indicate to you in this survey what level of automation they think is out there? I mean, what do they believe the level of automation available is, and why do they think that?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but we see that there are some percentage of the population, 10-15% of the population, that believe that they can go out and buy a fully automated vehicle today, and that's a dangerous misconception when it comes to that fear, because you cannot. The only fully automated vehicles that are available today are in test by other independent companies, and you may be able to get a ride in them in a few markets in good weather and perfect conditions, but you certainly cannot go buy one. And so AAA, for the past 5 or 6 years now, we have been advocating for the common sense naming of these systems to help reduce the confusion around them. Because when you call something fully self-driving, well, it really gives the impression that the vehicle is, well, fully self-driving, and it's not. The systems like autopilot and ProPilot and Pilot Assist, and it gives unfortunately an incorrect perception to consumers that it's hands off the wheel, eyes off the road, and you can take a nap, and that's not the case with the current technology.
I'm kind of curious if you can kind of go over, you mentioned a few of the technologies there, but looking in kind of general categories, what are the most common driver assist forms of automation that are currently available in the market?
So since September of 22, almost every new car that you purchase has automatic emergency braking in the front, meaning that if it sees a car that is stopped in front of it, it is likely to apply the brakes automatically and try to prevent or reduce the severity of that collision. And that's a great thing, because these are some of the most effective systems in reducing crashes and injury. Another common system that is also fairly effective is reverse automatic emergency braking, meaning the car will stop for you if you're backing up and are about to back into something or someone. Unfortunately, some of our recent testing found that those systems don't work in all cases like you would expect. But those are two of the more common ones. We also have lane keeping assistance. It's a pretty common one, and then arguably adaptive cruise control as well, which is more of a convenience feature than necessarily a safety feature. So those are some of the more common ones, but there are dozens of them that are being added to vehicles, and it's pretty confusing for consumers to try to weed through that and understand exactly what they have and how they work.
Did the survey get into the public perception or level of public support and confidence regarding some of those individual technologies? It
did, and in fact, there's a significant number of Americans that are looking for these systems in their next car. So 65% of Americans are looking for reverse automatic emergency braking in their next car, and about the same for forward, and about the same for lane keeping assistance. So you got 2/3 of Americans saying they want these things in their next vehicle. So if you compare that to 2/3 of Americans that are saying they are deathly afraid and would not trust a fully automated vehicle, it sort of shows you the comparison between the two and sort of the journey in which motorists are in relative to this vehicle technology.
One of the things we've been looking at is automation in large trucks, commercial vehicles. That's our audience, our drivers of those commercial motor vehicles. And we have actually reported on some companies that are planning fully driverless runs, especially I think down in Texas is one of the places that they're planning to do this fairly soon. And I didn't know if your survey really looked at that particular area of automation and the public's perception regarding, and again, not driver assist, but full automation in these large trucks.
We haven't looked at that in several years. We did ask some questions about that years ago, and not surprisingly, Americans are not overwhelmingly supportive of an 80,000-pound unmanned vehicle traveling next to them on the road. But I think that you're right. Automated trucking is one of the use cases that actually might have a positive return on investment for the companies that are interested in going that, because you can pull out the most expensive aspect of that, the driver behind the wheel. But in doing so, you have complicated many aspects of this. And I suspect to get beyond pilot and into production of a fully automated heavy truck, there's going to be a lot of roadblocks between here and full deployment of those systems.
Well, I think part of it, too, of course, is there's, and I know this isn't an area covered by your survey, but the labor issue that a lot of truck drivers themselves don't trust these technologies. And, of course, this is something aimed directly at their livelihoods.
Right. Yeah, I think there's liable to be significant consumer and industry pushback around that aspect, but time will tell. It is, the labor around it is a very expensive aspect, but so are these systems. Make no mistake. To put enough sensors on a vehicle to operate in a fully automated way, and then have all of the data collection, processing, and liability associated with all of those things is no small feat. So I think generally what we've seen in this industry, in the automated vehicle industry, is that everyone thought it would be a lot easier than it was. 7 or 8 years ago, everybody said it was within 2 years, and I think 7 or 8 years later, I think people are saying, in the next decade. And I think that is more liable to be, what we're going to see. We're going to see some, small deployments in limited use cases where they can be done safely, and then it will grow organically from there. So it will be an evolution rather than a revolution as we go forward.
That's all I have. Greg, is there anything else that you want to add or you think people need to be aware of regarding your survey or the issue overall?
Oh, I think one thing that I would add is that it's just really important to understand that consumers are embracing technology. They want automated technologies in their vehicle to help them drive. They are not yet ready to hand over the wheel to a fully automated vehicle. So as the industry considers this, both in the case that you mentioned and sort of heavy trucking along with passenger vehicles, we just need to keep that in mind, and we need to make the transition as smooth as possible. One way to do that is to ensure that the technologies that we have today are actually working as they are intended and as they're advertised. There's often a pretty big gap between how the systems are advertised and named and what the lawyers will allow in the owner's manual of that vehicle. And so we need to tighten that gap, increase the performance, and make that messaging a lot clearer for consumers so they understand what they're buying and how to safely use it.
Excellent, Greg. Thank you very much for your time. I sure appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
That was Greg Brannon, Director of Automotive Engineering Research at AAA, talking about the group's most recent survey gauging public perception of automated vehicles. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibertech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibertechtvd.com. It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now. Welcome back. A new requirement for small businesses went into effect this year, requiring those businesses to report certain information about their ownership. And while there is some doubt at this point whether the requirement will stay in place, business owners should still be prepared. To find out what's required, I talked with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service. Well, Shasta, let's talk a little bit about a new report that people are needing to file on beneficial ownership information. I'm wondering if you can explain what that term refers to. What is beneficial ownership information, and how are people having to report this?
Okay, so there's a lot to that question. The beneficial ownership information report it's a new reporting requirement for certain small business owners. So, and how it came about is in 2021, Congress enacted this requirement in a statute called the Corporate Transparency Act. Now, the purpose of the Corporate Transparency Act is to mainly to act as an anti-money laundering law. Congress essentially is saying that criminals try to conceal their ownership through corporations and LLCs to enable them to launder money, to commit tax fraud, to finance terrorism, other illegal things. So it's a lot of scary bad things. And to achieve this, they've come up with the Beneficial Ownership Information Report, or BOI, was devised. And then on January 1st of this year, this new reporting requirement went into effect, and it requires LLCs, corporations in the United States to report information about their beneficial owners, basically the individuals involved that own that company or control that company. And this information has to be reported to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, and they're a bureau of the United States Department of Treasury. So that's how this has become a requirement.
So let's kind of get into some of the details here. Among businesses, who has to file one of these BOI reports?
Corporations, LLCs, and other entities created by filing, documents with the Secretary of State or Department of State under the law of that state, or also Indian tribe. It's required to file this beneficial ownership information report, unless they qualify for an exemption. Now there's a big list of exemptions, and then we could talk about that, later. But the beneficial owner is an individual who directly or indirectly, exercises control over the reporting company. The reporting company being the corporation or the LLC, or controls at least 25% ownership interest. So if you're a business owner, corporate shareholder, LLC member, and your ownership interest is 25% or more, then you have this requirement to file this report.
Okay. You mentioned exemptions. Let's talk a little bit about, especially as it relates to trucking, who would be exempt from this requirement among small businesses?
Well, with trucking, the small businesses, I think most are going to have to file this report. It's really the large businesses that don't have to, large with 20 or more employees making, grossing 5 million or more, really large companies. So this is really affecting all the small business owner.
What about sole proprietors? Because technically they're not a business. Are they also required?
No, they are not. It specifically is if you've had to file a document to create your entity with the Secretary of State or the Department of State. So that's how we set up a corporation is we file articles of incorporation. With an LLC, we do articles of organization, and we are creating a legal entity within the state. And this is what they're focusing on. This is where they're looking. This is who they want to know about. They want to know about these corporations and LLCs, and they want to know about their owners because someone determined somewhere that, like I said, that they're trying to find criminals. They're trying to find bad actors, trying to conceal their ownership.
Let's walk through real quick, kind of the how of this. People have got to report. How do they go about doing that?
Okay, so you are going to have to fill out a beneficial ownership information report, and you're going to have to do that electronically through the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network website. So FinCEN website. So it's Fin, F-I-N, CEN, C-E-N, fincen.gov/BOI for beneficial ownership information. So you're going to go to that website and you're going to, follow the tabs to take you to that electronic filing section.
Okay. Once you get there, what kind of information are they going to ask you to put on that form?
What they want to know about the company and they want to know about the owners. So with the company, they're going to ask for the legal name. They're going to ask for any trade name or DBA you're using under that. They want to know the street address of the principal place of business. They want to know the jurisdiction of the formation, the state where it was filed, and they're going to want to know the tax ID number of that business entity. Regarding the beneficial owner, they want to know the legal name of the owner, date of birth, current address, and they're going to require ID, what they call unique identifying number. And what they're saying is they want a U.S. passport, a state driver's license, identification, any identification document issued by a state, local government, or a tribe. And they're going to want an image of this ID as well be submitted.
We talk a lot, Shasta, about using tax preparers with tax documents. In a case like this, is it wise to have someone who's a professional fill this out, or is this really something you need to do yourself?
If you feel comfortable and you want to give it a go, I would recommend getting information on what's going to be required on the report, have it all gathered together. Like we talked about, have your, obviously, your address, things like that, but get a copy of your articles of incorporation, your articles of organization, your tax ID number, have all these things, gather everything you possibly can, because you're going to need that whether you do it yourself or you have a professional do it. If you feel confident that, you're good at this sort of thing, then absolutely give it a go. But if you're not comfortable, then I would definitely, talk to, your tax preparer and see if they will help you with this. And I'm sure there's other things, out there, LegalZoom, stuff like that will charge a fee and help you with this report.
I would think, too, some people, you mentioned that this is something filed electronically. There's still folks out there running trucking businesses that don't have that kind of internet know-how. And that might be a case where having someone else do it for you is a good idea.
So my feeling is, if I'm on a website called Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, I don't want to make any mistakes. I don't want to, I want it done right. I never want the attention of the IRS, and I certainly don't want the attention of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, So for me, I would definitely want someone who's familiar with this, to do it. And I'll be honest, I haven't done a filing myself yet this year, but we definitely will be having to do a lot because we have a lot of corporations and LLCs that are clients that are going to have to get this done by the due dates.
What are those due dates?
Okay, so there's multiple due dates. If your company, your corporation, LLC, already existed as of January 1st of this year, so you were already in existence, you have to file this report by January 1st, 2025. So by the end of the year, by December 31st. If your company is created this year, from January 1st on, you have to file within 90 days of that filing being accepted by the state. So you have 90 days from that date. Now that's just for this year. Then next year, in 2025 and forward, when you create a company, set up a corporation or LLC, then you're going to have to file this report within 30 days of creating that entity. So if you already in existence as of the first of the year, prior to that, then you'll have till the end of this year to get your filing done. If you're creating your company this year, you're going to have 90 days. As of January 1st next year, you've got 30 days to get that filed.
We've just got a couple of minutes left, Shasta, and there is one thing that I think we should bring up here and make sure we get on here, and that is, although this is something that's required right now, there are some challenges to this in court, and there's actually been a court judgment.
Yes, there has. There's multiple challenges, like you said. March 1st, an Alabama district judge ruled that the Corporate Transparency Act is unconstitutional and on grounds that Congress exceeded its power in enacting the law. In addition, the National Small Business Association filed a suit in November of 22 to block the filing requirement. There are all sorts of small business lobbying groups that are arguing it violates the Constitution. So there are a lot of legal challenges to definitely watch. And we may find in the future these beneficial ownership reports are not required. However, they're required now. And I would recommend that all new businesses in 2024 definitely file within that 90-day window. If you're a business that was set up prior and you have until the end of the year, if you would rather wait and watch and see how things play out, you have till the end of the year to do that. But do not miss that deadline, because there are penalties. There are consequences for not filing at this point. And until something officially changes, I absolutely recommend doing these filings. There's no fee involved, but there are penalties if you don't.
Okay. We just have a little bit of time left. Shasta, what if you make a mistake on these forms? What should you do?
When you go onto the website where you've filed your initial form, you have an option where you can correct a report. Now, if you've made a mistake on your report, you have 30 days after becoming aware of the error, and you check the box that says corrected report, and you'll go in and do the correction. If something changes, like you move the business, yourself, whatever, if you have a new address, then you will click the button that says you're making changes to your existing form, and then you'll have 30 days within the time of that change. So let's say you've moved your residence, you'll have 30 days to report that change.
Shasta, thank you very much for the information. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
I've been talking with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping Service about a requirement for small businesses to report beneficial ownership information. And just a reminder, as we mentioned earlier, a federal judge has ruled that the requirement to report the information is unconstitutional, and now a second case on the rule has been ruled on as well. As of broadcast time, it's unknown if the government will appeal that ruling, and it's recommended that small business owners be prepared to report. Meanwhile, if you have questions about the requirement, you can go to the website fincen.gov/BOI. Again, that's fincen.gov/BOI. And if you have questions about this or other tax matters, you can contact Shasta May by calling 1-888-407-1669, by email at smay@mbataxhelp.com, or through the company's website, mbataxhelp.com. We'll have all that information on our website, landlinenow.com. Just click on the photo or headline in the red box and you'll find all the email addresses, website links, and phone numbers we mention on the show. Again, that's at landlinenow.com. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Capital Reman, your leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Let us help you avoid costly downtime and repairs by visiting capitalreman.com today. Use code OOIDA10 to receive your member benefits.
Get the most power performance out of your rig with Howe's Diesel Defender. It provides maximum lubricity and contains specialized IDX4 detergent to clean and prevent deposits and safely removes harmful water. Visit Howe'sProducts.com for more information.
Attention professional drivers, do you owe money to the IRS? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. Call for help now, 855-976-4291. That's 855-976-4291.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back. We've hit the home stretch of our show today. Just enough time to catch up with Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine for our weekly check on which trucking issues are being discussed on the state level right now. Keith, always good to see you.
Scott, good to see you. Did you keep your Eclipse glasses?
Of course. They'll be ready in 20 years when we have the next one.
It was 2044.
2044, I think.
I think you might have to travel, to the northwest U.S. to see it.
Technicalities.
But you'll be retired then, living the good life, I'm sure.
We'll see. Who knows? I'm taking it one day at a time, Keith.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, let's talk about Florida here. They're taking predatory towing one day at a time. In a few months here, we're going to have a new law on the books that will address the issue here, a state notorious for predatory towing problems. But again, there's a new law going into effect here in a few months, Keith. That should help change that a little bit.
Yeah, listeners here have heard quite a bit from us during our discussions and some other discussions that Landline and OOIDA have been following on towing reform pursuits around the country. And in Florida, one of the few states this year that have kind of gotten to the finish line with their reform efforts. And as we discussed previously, Florida has, it seems like no matter where you go in Florida, there is some sort of government or I say group, but department that they can have their own towing rules set. The state has no maximum rate for towing or storage. What they do have is they allow each county to set maximum rates. Cities can set maximum rates, and obviously they would apply in areas where the county rates do not apply. And then you've got the Florida Highway Patrol. If a trooper calls for a tow, maximum rates that the Highway Patrol has set up, they take precedence unless this tow is needed where there is a county or a city with established rates. So a lot of background there.
And a lot of patchwork. A lot of patchwork laws there.
Exactly. It is the definition of depends on where you're at is how much you would possibly have to be paying for a tow. But what they're looking to do with the revisions that have been made, that have been signed into law, is requiring counties to set maximum rates that towers could charge for cleanup, disposal of hazardous materials, non-hazardous materials that are incidental to a non-consensual tow. Cities, they're also permitted to set those same sorts of rates. And then you have, with this new law, it takes effect July 1st. If it's an area without an established maximum rate, at that point, the rates that are set by the Florida Highway Patrol, those are the ones that would apply. So a lot of stuff going on with the legislation, but a lot of stuff that they felt like they needed to make some revisions to based off of what the current rules are there in the state. Again, the focus being on the maximum rates and trying to make it a little bit weigh it a little bit more into the advantage of consumers.
Well, and I think, too, it's worth mentioning that a rate sheet, right, also has to be made available at the scene of a tow to the owner or the operator if they're there. And this is really all in the name of making sure people know what to expect, because we've heard the stories, we've heard the horror stories time and time again of these just astronomical bills coming seemingly out of nowhere for these tows that, need to be done, but these people don't know what to expect, and they're getting hit with these huge bills. This should, you would think, help reverse that in Florida there, again, a state that's kind of notorious for this problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Notorious enough that, you had lawmakers there at the State House that had been working for years trying to craft legislation that they were going to be able to weave through the State House despite, definitely was going to be opposition. But you have those folks who have communicated to lawmakers the need for reform and finally being able to accomplish that. I mean, you mentioned a requirement with this new law, again, that takes effect July 1st. That rate sheet would need to be made available if the owner or the operator of the vehicle is there at the scene. There's also the requirement that rates be posted online. And that if you are a county in the state of Florida, a city, or the Florida Highway Patrol, that you establish a process for investigating and resolving complaints that come up based off of what the fees that ultimately get charged to the vehicle owner or operator.
Yeah, it'll be interesting now to see these cities, these counties come up with their own rates and what those look like. But again, July 1st is when this takes effect. Those rates are going to be posted online in these respective counties and cities. So we'll keep an eye on that. But again, we're taking a step in the right direction there in Florida to address a problem that we're all very well aware of. And it seems like more and more people are now becoming more aware of. So good news there in Florida. Less good news for truckers in Wisconsin, where a bill that would have taken a whack at nuclear verdicts made it to the governor's desk. Seems like good progress there, but it got the veto treatment. Let's start with the details on this bill, Keith.
Yeah, always a problem whenever legislation gets to the State House, but the governor is not on board to make those changes. And in this instance, some changes definitely that truck drivers recognize badly needed. The Wisconsin Motor Carriers Association as well as the OIDA advocated for putting in place what described as some a reasonable cap on non-economic damages. Lawmakers there in Wisconsin were informed about how bad the situation has gotten as far as incidents like pain and suffering type damages. We're not talking about direct damages, they're going to apply to for medical expenses and stuff. These are pain and suffering, non-economic damages that have gone through the roof. What this legislation attempted to do was put in a $1 million limit on those non-economic damages. Lawmakers were informed that the average verdict size for a lawsuit that exceeds $1 million, if it involves a truck, that it's increased by nearly 1,000%, and those types of numbers were enough to get the legislation to the State House. But ultimately, as you pointed out, the governor wasn't willing to put his name on that paper.
Yeah, one thing you highlighted in your piece on landline.media too was a 2023 report from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute for Legal Reform. Show that the average settlement award was $27.5 million in some of these crashes here. Clearly, it's an issue there in Wisconsin and elsewhere as well. The governor there, Tony Evers, as you mentioned, did veto this. Did he give a reason as to why? I mean, what's the reasoning?
Yeah, always good. Whenever you've got a governor, whenever they veto, that they include a message or their statement with it, and he described the bill as arbitrarily capping non-economic damages. Which, I mean, all right. Seriously? But anyway, he also had pointed out that he had concerns about whether this new law, being inconsistent with the current law, whether it could open up the state to litigation His belief being that, this is against the state's constitution. He felt like it could even be against the United States Constitution if they were to put in place this cap again. So this issue with the current governor in Wisconsin, I don't know if that's going to have a happy ending, but
doesn't seem like it. Yeah. But I'm sure legislators there will continue their work on this issue. Keith, we know you're going to keep at it as well and keep us updated as details come available. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Our thanks to Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine, and our thanks to you for listening. That's our show for today. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.